Hi, Ashley.
Hello.
Welcome back from vacation.
Thank you.
Looks like we're ready, but we don't have a quorum yet. So we'll give it another few minutes, okay?
Okay.
Okay. I think we have enough for a quorum. Hi. Okay. We're gonna get our Public Works Committee started. Good morning, everyone. If we could put the information for the public to join, that would be great. Thank you. We continue to meet virtually, but you can always reach us by going to the city's website and finding information on how to join and invite public comment by clicking on the meetings tab. You can call City Council and leave a message by calling 406-552-6012, and you can email all of us at council@ci.missoula.mt.us, and these meetings are recorded so you can have access to them at your convenience. And with that, Ashley, if we could do a roll call for attendance, please.
Sure. Anderson?
She'll be absent.
Okay. Becerra?
Present.
Carlino?
Present.
Okay. Contos?
Here.
Hess?
Present.
Jones?
Present.
Jordan? Nugent? Savage? Cheryl? Vasika?
Present.
West?
Present.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Next, we have minutes from March 16th to approve. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will be approved. And quick check on public to provide public comment on items not on the agenda, and I don't see anyone. So with that, we will move to our first item of business, and that is an agreement with Dennis and Kathy Lower for the sale of 605 Ben Hogan Drive, and Logan McInnes is here to present.
Hello, I'm Logan McInnes, Deputy Public Works Director for Utilities. If I can show my screen here, I'll put up an exhibit to give you all an idea where the property is that we're talking about. Hopefully you can all see that.
No.
Not yet. Ah,
Not
there
yet.
it is.
Huh. Hmm.
We're
Yeah.
seeing it now,
Yeah.
Logan, but we're also seeing your, it's not just the picture of the area, but also the folders tab.
Huh, I apologize, I don't know. What's going on? I guess if you can see enough, it
Yep.
doesn't. So this, if you can see where my mouse is, this is the parcel that we're talking about. It sits above Ben Hogan Drive, which is, the blue line is where the water line used to go up. It's an old tank site that's been abandoned for many years. It's quite steep. It's about a 20% slope up above Ben Hogan Drive. Sits down just below Spanish Peaks Drive, but we don't have any legal access from Spanish Peaks Drive to the parcel. While I'm here, I'll show, this is Dennis and Kathy Lower's house. So as you can imagine, if we sold this, somebody else bought it, it's gonna significantly affect their view shed. So I think that's probably why they're interested in the parcel.
Mm.
So we asked Annalise to be here today, and maybe she can just kind of give us if that's okay, to have her kind of
Yeah,
give us
of course.
a
And
background on how they came up with, the market analysis they used to set the listing price.
yeah, that'd be great. And welcome, Annalise. Good to see you.
Hi. Nice to see you all again on this side. Thank you for the opportunity. So just a quick background on this particular parcel. It is just over 1.5 acres. It does encompass a fairly substantial water tank, an abandoned water tank that's buried. So it's like a concrete tank that's, I should say partially buried.
Shelter.
Pardon?
Sorry. Okay.
Continue?
Yep.
Okay. So, there's a couple challenges that came with it. So when we were trying to evaluate it, of course, it's always hard to find references for properties that have massive concrete structures on them that potentially would have to be removed. Strangely enough, this one was actually not zoned into the city when it was acquired, and so it has remained county. There is questionable access to it. It seems to be fairly limited in what the easement use could be. You would have to get a variance if you were able to figure out an access from Ben Hogan because the grade is so steep. And then just a multitude of other things, like we are unsure if the county would request that you remove the water tank. So there was quite a few challenges. The advantages are it's a beautiful piece of property as far as views go. And it really just made the most amount of sense to have the adjacent property owner purchase it. I believe the Lauer's intent is to return it to the HOA to include, there's open space. The HOA owns the common space underneath. So it kind of makes sense to just sort of have that be an addition. Ideally, if it had great access, it would be worth quite a bit more. But based on some of the challenges, this was what we were able to come up with.
Great. Thanks for that background, Annalise. Let's see here. There we go. Questions. Go ahead, Jordan.
Thanks. It's nice to see you, Annalise. Does in a process like this where we're disposing of city property, is there? Can you talk a little bit about the process? About I assume that you did a market analysis and set and had an asking price. And is this was there back and forth? Was there a negotiated agreed upon price, or what was the process from our standpoint?
And you're referencing when it was actually listed for sale, correct? So,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So in an effort of being transparent, we list everything on the multiple listing site. And then of course, field lots of phone calls about why things are priced the way they are. And in this particular case, of course, there's several limitations that make it somewhat prohibitive for development. That being said, we did receive 3 offers on it. And all very much the same as far as like competitively, very similar process. What I think appealed to the city the most was the fact that the adjacent property owner had easily the best access to it and wanted to probably make use of it the best. And so he was, encouraged. He was able to make an offer that was satisfactory to the city. But again, keeping in mind, like nothing's going to be done with it in regards to like nothing's going to be developed on it. So, that it's quite a bit of money just to preserve Viewshed, but they were willing to do that. They saw the value in it.
Okay. And just a follow-up comment, that's really helpful. I wanted to shine a light on the fact that this was a competitive sale and that there was, okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Logan, would you mind stop sharing the screen? Thank you. Okay. John, go ahead.
Yes, I'm curious. The price was set, and you said you had several other offers. I understand it makes sense that the person living next to it would want to purchase it. What was the reason for the others if they can't build?
One of them did not seem to be, when I talked with their agent was not completely familiar with the limitations, but still wanted to submit the offer. And I think probably just sheer will on that one. And the other one, the purchaser was intending to hold on to it with the intention of trying to find some sort of an access or easement. So that was part of the contingency. So it would have actually prolonged the process in an effort to get an attorney, verify if they could get access to it, that kind of thing. So I think it just, for time and simplicity, it made the most amount of sense to go with the offer from the adjacent owner.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, go ahead.
I was wondering if at this spot, if there's opportunity to build like permanently affordable housing or do like a government land trust or or anything like that, rather than just selling it.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Because of the access challenges, so again, you would have to clarify that you could in fact use the water easement as legal access to the property. And it's also a 17% grade. So think of the M is also like going up to the M is a 17% grade, and you can't pave it because it's also a utility easement alongside of it. So safety wise, all of that, I think you would be hard pressed to be able to make it work. Probably next to impossible.
Yeah, I think you would have to have significant cut and fill in that area just to provide access to it. Okay, any other questions from council members? Heidi, go ahead.
Logan, I might have missed it too, but did you explain where the proceeds from this sale will go to, and I guess how those work within enterprise funds? I think that would be useful to just touch on.
Yep, and I didn't get to that, so I'm glad you asked. So yes, it's an asset of the Water Enterprise Fund. So obviously assets, these are being paid for by water customers, so the value of the asset would stay in the enterprise fund to go for other purposes, strictly for the water utility.
Great. Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll check for public in attendance, and we don't have anyone. So with that, I still need a motion from someone. Sandra, go ahead.
I'll make the recommended motion.
Great, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. No public to provide comment on the motion. So we'll take a roll call vote, please. Ashley.
Sarah,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
She had to leave.
okay. Jordan,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
That is 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Great. So that will be on our consent agenda. Thank you, Logan, and thanks to Annalise for the information and good to see you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next on our agenda is, let me pull this, a resolution of support for the 2022 Race Mullen Grant, and Aaron Wilson is here to present.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron Wilson, Infrastructure Mobility Planning Manager for the city. And so we've got a resolution of support for a grant application that we're hoping City Council will approve. As the item says, this is for a federal RAISE grant. That's well, I'm not going to get into the acronym there because I'll likely get it wrong, but it is a continuation of what was previously BUILD, and before BUILD was referred to as TIGER. So these are large federal grant programs that have been around for over a decade now. Missoula has received several of these. One was the Missoula to Lolo Trail. We also received $13 million for this Mullen, what we call the Mullen Build Project back in 2019. And what we're putting together for this round of RAISE funding is a continuation of that Mullen Build Project. So building on the $13 million that we received, which was only a portion of that grant request in 2019. I think we had asked for $23 million, received 13. And so there's a gap in funding. And we've had lots of conversations about that at council over the years in terms of how to fill that gap. And this is one of the ways. So just as a little bit of background, these federal grants come along RAISE and BUILD have been an annual program. The notice of funding opportunity was announced about a month and a half ago. The deadline is April 14th, so it's coming up here really quick. So our hope is that we can get this approved to submit by that April 14th deadline. We did look at a number of different, anytime we get these grant opportunities, we're always looking for the best possible project to put forward. So projects that are going to compete well to the specific criteria. Those criteria change, with different administrations and different announcements. And we looked at a number of projects for this round. The turnaround time is really short. And so we wanted to look for a project that would be easy to put a grant application together, that would be competitive against the criteria, and that was essentially ready to go, that we wouldn't have to worry about whether we could actually meet the deadline. So with these grants, you have to get started pretty quickly. There are timelines for when you have to get projects obligated, which means you have the money committed to the project and then actually spend that money. I think for this particular round, we would have about 3 years to get from the time we would hear about the award to get the money obligated, which is pretty tight, and then another about 4 years to get the project constructed. So really they're looking for projects that are ready to go to construction. So looking at all of our various priority projects, we have a number of them, but a lot of the other projects that we were looking at we weren't at a point where we could effectively put together a grant application for this particular round. So we landed on the continuing to get funding for the Mullen Build Project. There's a lot of benefits there. and I'll share my screen in a moment, but just the ability to continue progress on that project. It's going to construction on the first phase next month. We have a lot of the design elements already complete as part of that first round of funding. So we have the designs in place. We have most of the right of way we need. There's just very few risks to this project, and it has a lot of benefits in terms of providing good transportation facilities in an area where we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth as a response to that initial award in 2019, the master planning. There's just a lot of activity there. So it felt timely. It's a good project. We can meet the criteria very well with this. So it ended up being a good fit, and we have all the resources we need to put together an efficient grant application. So I do want to show, let me share my screen here really quick. Let's see. All right, can you all see this overview of the project? Great. So
Yep.
Again, this is a continuation of the full Mullen build project. What this map shows are all the various project elements that we'd be constructing. As a reminder, this is an area west of Reserve between Mullen and Broadway. The 2019 funding gave us enough to build out essentially the core street elements for a couple of different phases, including Mary Jane Boulevard North and South. So completing the connection of Mary Jane from Broadway to Mullen. We have elements of George Elmer South, so from an extended England Boulevard down to Mullen Road. And then England Boulevard, continuing that out to George Elmer. So that's essentially what and then there are intersection improvements on Mullen Road, roundabouts at George Elmer and Mary Jane. And there's a separate project that MDT is funding to do a signal at Mary Jane and Broadway. So that was what was funded with the $13 million build grant that we received in 2019. But due to cost inflation has been pretty substantial across all of our projects. And it's certainly true for this one. And so really in those elements, we're just able to build out the street, the curb, the gutter, some of the stormwater elements, and just the basic street infrastructure. We weren't able to include the bike lane, the protected bike lanes, sidewalks, street lighting, some of those other critical transportation elements to create what we envision in terms of the multimodal transportation. And so what we're proposing in this RAISE grant is to complete those elements, what we're already starting with the previous build grant. So we would be doing protected bike lanes on Mary Jane Boulevard, including getting some funding to help with the improvements through the existing neighborhood section. So we think we can do some, if we can get some additional funding, we can do a better job of the design and help meet some of the neighbor concerns through that existing section of Mary Jane Boulevard. We would also add in sidewalks and lighting through that section. We'd also be doing the same improvements on England Boulevard and George Elmer South. So essentially building out those streets to the full multimodal facilities, getting them complete. We'd also be applying for funding for some of a couple of the key trails. So doing the Tipperary Way Trail from George Elmer over to Flynn. So what's on here listed is 3-1. So creating this key, it's essentially a safe route to school. It gets people from all of the developments along George Elmer over to Hellgate Elementary. Will be a really key connection. We'd be building the Flynn Lane Trail between England and Hellgate Elementary. So again, creating some school connectivity through here, and then doing the trail along Mullen Road, completing it essentially from Flynn Lane to Reserve Street. So connecting this area to the rest of Missoula. So from that intersection, there's bike lanes on Reserve Street, there's bike lanes on Mullen Road, and you start to get into the rest of the network in Missoula. So those would be the elements that we're including in this grant application, is to finish out all of the work on those streets so that we would have a complete network for Mary Jane Boulevard, England Boulevard, and George Elmer, which would be really fantastic given the level of development activity that we're seeing out here. I think in our estimate, the approved and sort of in the pipeline projects is somewhere around upwards of 2,600 or 2,700 units that we're seeing that could be approved here in the next year or so, which is pretty phenomenal for a 2 to 3 year period since we got the original award. So it's been a really successful project, I think, in terms of spurring growth and the kind of growth that we want to see in this area. On the resolution, you'll notice that we're not sure exactly what the cost. We're still finalizing the details on what all of these improvements will cost. We should have that this week or early next week. But in terms of what the city has already committed, we have a fair amount of funding already into the 2019 build. So the local match on this project is really substantial. We've got over $6 million in city funds through utilities and impact fees. We have the special transportation impact fee that is continually raising money as we see development out there. I think that's up to $17 million of additional funding, and this would help offset some of that. Maybe not all of it, depending on cost escalation, but this would help offset that, and it gets us the project now instead of waiting until we have all of the impact fees collected to build out the infrastructure. So we're already, between the city and the county, we're committed to some additional work in our Mullen build grant agreement of around $700,000 to build out the trails. So we already have that. Again, that's coming from those existing funding sources that we have. So we're not asking for any additional funding to help match this project. It's just those existing funding sources that we already have in place. So I just want to make sure we're clear that there's no additional funding that we have to generate for this grant. We're just using existing funding that we already have planned for the Mullen build project. So I think that's, in a nutshell, what we're bringing forward. Hoping to get a letter of this resolution approved by council so we can submit that. This would be submitted as a city application, so we would be continuing to do this in partnership with the county, but the city would be managing this specific grant request as opposed to the county. So
Great, thank you. And I just want to point out that this, the RACE acronym stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. So I think it really does get to what we're trying to do in the Mullen area. And, you know, it makes me think of the conversation we had about our a project in land use and planning committee, where, you know, it's important to have the infrastructure as before a lot of development takes place in order to ensure that we have multimodal infrastructure available for the community. So this would be a really good way to ensure that that we do that, planning, you know, ahead of development and not as an afterthought or as a, you know, as something that's required by the development, but rather putting it in before that happens. So I am fully supportive of it. We are short on time, but I want to get to some of the raised hands that I see, and Jordan and then Kristen Jordan.
Thanks, Mirta. And I'd like to make the recommended motion and just speak to it briefly. So I'm really excited that we're putting this forward again, Aaron. I think that this is a really great opportunity to now that the federal government has recognized the need for a large increase in infrastructure funding. I think that this is a great opportunity to go back and show the success that we've had. I've been really involved in this project for many years, and it's been a real pleasure to see it come together. Went to DC with Mike Nugent and Jeremy Keene and the commissioners and a delegation of about 20 people from Missoula, from private sector and government and so many different areas to just show the broad-based support. And I think that broad-based support is why we were able to bring home the first iteration of this build grant. We had universal support from both senators and from then Representative Gianforte, and we were able to bring home a massive grant under the build program. I think that you know, and with a different administration in DC, and I think that shows that projects like this transcend politics and I think that that's because this is a good project, and it was appealing to the Department of Transportation, and it was appealing to our congressional delegation. And I think that it'll only be more appealing when we show the success that we've had out there. Layering on top of everything that's come before this, we now have the Satopkin Area Master Plan, which has some pretty innovative form-based land use codes. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity to make this area, to continue to improve this area, or to continue to develop this area in a responsible manner. And the alternative is that this is greenfield development, but it's proximate. And if not here, then it's Frenchtown or Lolo or Florence or areas that are not proximate. And so building this out in a way that has good connectivity is going to be the best way to create good neighborhoods for the next tens of thousands of housing units in Missoula.
Yeah, agree. Kristen, go ahead.
Thank you. Erin, I am wondering what kind of feedback you've had from folks out in the area. And I apologize, I did have to step away for a sec. So if you brought that up before, I missed it, and I'm sorry. Thank you.
I think the feedback has generally been positive. We've had some good conversations, or the most focused conversations, with sort of that existing section of Mary Jane Boulevard, where there wasn't included in the original grant application. We were trying to figure out how to fit those facilities into the existing roadway, which is why we want to include it in this round of funding, so that we can do a better improvement that doesn't impact parking or some of the other concerns that we heard from those neighbors. So I think this helps mitigate that if we can get this award. But otherwise, I think generally the reception has been fairly positive in terms of creating better connectivity for existing neighborhoods, relieving some of the pressure on specific intersections. It's going to be really helpful for Flynn Lane in particular, where people are going to trying to get out of Flynn Lane when people are dropping their kids off to school, or just the amount of traffic that's going there is going to be really helpful. The safety improvements at those intersections are going to be really, really helpful. So I think overall we've had a ton of it. We probably had more public participation and involvement on this project than any other transportation project, specific infrastructure project that I've been involved in. And I think generally it's been supportive, and we've tried to involve the community in some of the decision-making aspects too. So I think there's, like Jordan said, there's been a really broad buy-in on this project. So.
Great. Okay, we have a motion on the floor and no public to provide comment on this motion. So we'll take a roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
That is 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Great. So that too will be on our consent agenda. And thank you so much, Erin, for working on this, and fingers crossed we get some money.
Yeah, thank you all. And we'll let you know when we hear.
Great. Okay, and with that, we don't have any additional items. So we went over a couple minutes, but we would be